How's it going, family? Back again. Last time we were hitting it off, talking about the eye being single and being full of light in itself. Today we hit into the scripture that hits the polar opposite of that. Matthew 6, verse 23. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? This verse in itself uses powerful symbolic contrast to describe the consequences of distorted perception in itself. The evil eye in allegory does not refer to witchcraft or literal curses. It represents an unhealthy, divided, corrupted, or distorted way of seeing reality. I think with a lot of things, sometimes we like to think in terms of people doing us dirty, but sometimes we don't want to blame the perception and the eye that we look at life at. An evil eye is a mind clouded by fear, jealousy, greed, insecurity, resentment, ego, pride, or internal conflict. It symbolizes a lens that is twisted away from truth, purity, and spiritual alignment. When Jesus says, thy whole body shall be full of darkness, he is illustrating a profound truth about perception. The body symbolizes the whole being, the inner world, the emotional landscape, and the direction of one's life. Darkness represents confusion, instability, and inner turmoil, spiritual blindness, and emotional distortion. The allegory is clear. When your perception is unhealthy, your entire life becomes affected. A distorted lens produces a distorted existence. The second part of the verse intensifies the symbolism. If the light that is in thee be darkness, means that if what you believe is truth is actually false. If what you trust is actually deception, or if what you rely on is rooted in illusion, then the darkness becomes even deeper. This refers to people who are convinced they see clearly when in reality their vision is clouded. This is the deepest form of darkness because it is darkness mistaken for light. It represents self-deception, spiritual blindness, or a life guided by illusions disguised as truth. How great is that darkness symbolizes the depth of disorientation that occurs when perception itself is damaged. This verse teaches that the root of your suffering is often not your circumstances, but the way you interpret them. Darkness begins in the eye, and not always necessarily in the world. And this fascination with always people are bewitching us and doing witchcraft on us. To a degree, sometimes they are, but to a degree, you're also allowing them to do it to you by believing in all of this and thinking all the time that people are bewitching you all the time and doing witchcraft upon you. Because this scripture in itself describes a powerful psychological truth about perception and its impact on the entire inner system. In the architecture of the mind, the eye symbolizes the cognitive lenses through which the brain interprets experience. This includes belief systems, emotional patterns, subconscious programming, and learned assumptions. When Jesus says, the eye be evil, it points to a perceptual system that is misaligned or corrupted. This is a mind shaped by trauma, unresolved wounds, anxiety, jealousy, insecurity, or distorted thinking patterns. These distortions act like filters that alter how reality is perceived. Thy whole body shall be full of darkness reflects how the brain's interpretation of reality affects the entire nervous system. When perception is negative, fearful, or distorted, the limbic system activates survival responses. The amygdala becomes overreactive, producing chronic stress, emotional instability, hypervigilance, and pessimism. I always used to think, I used to be quite a pessimist in essence myself. I used to think it's being a realist. And all honestly, being a pessimist is being a negative person. While they have an optimistic outlook on life, the body reacts with tension, exhaustion, hormonal imbalance, and hyper-awareness. Darkness in the body symbolizes emotional heaviness, mental fog, confusion, and the inability to see solutions clearly. When perception is unhealthy, the entire body system becomes destabilized. The deep warning comes in the phrase, if the light that is in thee be darkness in its essence, This describes cognitive distortion, where a person generally believes their unhealthy perception is correct. This is the most dangerous state because the individual does not recognize their own misalignment. They may call fear intuition, call trauma discernment, or call ego confidence. When the mind mistakes darkness for light, self-deception becomes the dominant internal driver. This creates entrenched patterns that are difficult to break. How great is that darkness, though? Reflects the magnitude of confusion and emotional suffering that results when perception itself is compromised. In psychological architecture, healing requires correcting the lenses. If the lenses is broken, everything filtered through it becomes dark, and life does not become a very pleasant experience all in itself, because it aligns with the profound cosmic principle. The quality of your inner perception determines the quality of your entire energetic field. In cosmic and natural law, the eye symbolizes the inner lenses of awareness, the energetic focus that directs your vibration. When the verse speaks of an evil eye, it symbolizes perception corrupted by lower vibrations such as fear, anger, envy, greed, self-deception, or ego attachment. These states darken the inner lenses, preventing a person from seeing truth. In cosmic law, misalignment in perception leads to misalignment in experience. Thy whole body shall be full of darkness reflects the law of resonance. Darkness in this context represents low vibrational states, confusion, stagnation, and spiritual disconnection. Nature teaches that the state of the core determines the state of the whole itself. A tree with a diseased root produces weak branches. A polluted river infects the surrounding ecosystem. In the same way, a distorted inner lens radiates distortion into the emotional, spiritual, and energetic body. The entire being becomes affected because energy flows from the center outwards. You cannot have a negative outlook on life and expect life to be great to you. There's no way in the world that that's going to happen. The warning, if the light that is in thee be darkness, aligns with the cosmic law of illusion itself. The greatest danger is not darkness itself, but mistaking darkness for enlightenment. This represents the state where ego masquerades as truth, where illusion feels like clarity, where trauma feels like intuition, and where false beliefs feel like wisdom. This is the deepest spiritual blindness because the person no longer questions their perception. They assume their distortions is truth, strengthening the misalignment. How great is that darkness describes the magnitude of energetic consequence when someone lives through a corrupted lens. In cosmic terms, darkness expands when the inner eye is misaligned. The universe mirrors back the state of your perception, amplifying the internal condition and external experiences. This verse teaches that true alignment begins with purifying the inner lenses. When perception is clear, your entire energetic field radiates light in its essence. Because this scripture gives one of the most practical and urgent warnings for your personal, emotional, and spiritual life. When Jesus speaks of an evil eye, he is referring to distorted perception, the kind of inner lenses that causes you to misinterpret situations, sabotage yourself, or see life through negativity and fear. This means that if your mindset is unhealthy, everything you experience will feel dark, heavy, or chaotic, even when the situation itself is neutral or positive. Thy whole body shall be full of darkness shows how perception affects every part of your life. If your interpretation of reality is clouded by insecurity, jealousy, trauma, anxiety, or bitterness, then your emotional world becomes unstable. You will feel drained, overwhelmed, or discouraged. Not because life is against you, but because your lens is poisoned. You see threats where there are none, betrayal where there is honesty, lack where there is abundance, and danger where there is opportunity. This is how the inner eye can darken the whole life and alter the whole fabric of how you perceive and see life itself. When your mind looks at opportunities pop up. When you see honesty in people, it portrays that back to you. It is a weird thing. The deeper warning comes in the phrase, if the light that is in thee be darkness, this means that the most dangerous state is when you believe your distorted perception is truth. When you mistake trauma for discernment, fear for intuition, ego for confidence, or suspicion for wisdom, you start questioning your own lenses. Your darkness becomes reinforced because you think it is light. This leads to self-sabotage, damaged relationships, poor decisions, and unnecessary suffering. How great is that darkness? Calls you to take responsibility for your perception. For once, people need to start taking their own responsibility. Some of it is not your fault, but you are responsible for the way you perceive the rest of it. Some of it may have been done to you, but how you respond to it is up to you. Because healing begins with admitting that your lenses may be distorted. Growth begins with challenging your assumptions. Transformation begins with asking, is this really true? Or is this my wound speaking? This verse urges you to purify your inner eye by healing. Introspection, prayer, therapy, and doing the shadow work and spiritual alignment. When your lenses become clear, your entire life becomes even clearer. Because the scripture itself is very powerful. And now we'll get into a very powerful scripture in the next one, in Matthew 6 verse 24. For you must know, no man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And as always, family, don't forget to like and subscribe till we meet in the next segment.